Are you looking for the best Sony camera in 2023 for photographers and filmmakers? In this video, we will look at some of the best Sony camera in 2023 for photographers and filmmakers on the market. Before we get started with our video, we have included links in the description, so make sure you check those out to see which one is in your budget range. Number 1. Sony A7 IV, best all-round full-frame camera for professionals. If you want the best all-round Sony camera, look no further than the Sony A7 IV, which is what I've been shooting with since 2022. This is Sony's most popular line of mirrorless cameras, and they have pulled out all the stops when it comes to updating the new model. The Sony A7 IV makes it easy to see why Sony caused so many photographers to switch from DSLR to mirrorless. As with any good camera, I should start by talking about the image quality of the Sony A7 IV. The new 33MP Exmor RBSI CMOS sensor provides outstanding image quality. A stone building on top of a mountain. Sony A7 IV plus Sony 16 to 35mm f divided by 2.8. 1/1000th f2.8 ISO 100, Mark Burgery. That powerful sensor really shines in low light conditions. The Sony A7 IV has low noise throughout its entire ISO 100-51200 range. Low light shooting often means camera shake, but the Sony A7 IV has 5.5 stop effective 5-axis steady shot inside stabilization. This protects against 5 separate types of autofocus technology that is backed by advanced algorithms that can track your subject more effectively than ever before. I've had subjects walk in and out of frame and autofocus still holds on even with all those changes in my composition. These features work just as well in photo as they do in video. That real-time focus has presets for humans, animals, and now even birds. The AF Assist mode is a personal favorite of mine. This lets you use the advanced autofocus to catch your subject, but then allows for instant manual adjustments so you can switch between subjects with ease. The flip screen is another feature worth highlighting. The Sony A7 IV has a screen that can be tilted to almost any orientation. This is great for recording your own social media content or for capturing low-angle photography shots. Either way, the flexibility of the touchscreen means that you can get creative without having to be a contortionist. This camera offers stunning performance for photographers and filmmakers alike while still staying within the scope of a reasonable budget, at least when compared to the Sony A1. Number 2. Sony A1, best all-round for professionals with big budgets. The Sony A1 is a true flagship camera and represents the best of what Sony currently has to offer for photographers and videographers. If you want a camera that is ready for absolutely anything, this is the one for you. The image quality on the Sony A1 is some of the best I've seen. The 50-megapixel full-frame Exmor RBSI CMOS sensor delivers crystal-clear images within an impressive ISO range of 50-100-2400. This camera is going to help you knock it out of the park when you're shooting at weddings, events, or even concerts in dimly lit venues. The autofocus system covers 92% of the image with a combination of 759 phase detection points and 425 contrast detection areas. The Sony Aeon SAF system works for both photo and video applications. The AF system is built to automatically focus and track eyes whether your subject is human or animal. Wildlife photographers will definitely have an easier time keeping their subjects in focus even if they are constantly changing speed. The video capability on the Sony A1 is nothing short of stunning. You can comfortably shoot in 4 Kelvin even up to 120 frames per second, but this camera also shoots 8 Kelvin at 30 FPS. It's got more than enough computing power to handle those large file sizes. It also has a useful library of different video codecs so you can optimize your shooting for social media or wherever else you'll be displaying your footage. I'm going to take a quick break from talking about the technical power of the Sony A1 to discuss the ergonomics and feel of this camera. The smaller size of mirrorless cameras has definitely been a challenge for anyone used to do a larger and heavier DSLR body. The Sony A1 actually has a little bit more weight to it, making it feel more familiar in my hands. This also helps it counterbalance larger lenses that might feel a little unbalanced on some of these smaller DS mirrorless body. The magnesium alloy chassis and weather-sealed design of the Sony A1 also mean that I'm not too worried about taking this expensive piece of kit out into some rugged shooting conditions. A man in a blue uniform jumping up into the air to catch a soccer ball. 400mm f2.8 GMOS at 1/2500 to the second. f2.8 Sony. At this point, I know what all of the wedding and event photographers out there are thinking. Does the Sony A1 have 2 memory card slots? The Sony A1 offers 2 memory card slots that can both seat Express Type A and SD Type memory card. You can shoot a once-in-a-lifetime event with the peace of mind that you have some backup in case one card doesn't make it back home with you. The Sony A1 was also built for optimized connectivity. Ports include USB-C, micro USB, Ethernet, PC Sync, and a few others. You've also got your choice of Wi-Fi, NFC, and Bluetooth for a cable-free connection. Sony also updated the performance when it comes to syncing the Sony A1 with the Sony camera app ecosystem. This goes a long way to improve the performance of these apps and give you more options when it comes to controlling your camera during a shoot. There really is hardly anything negative to say about the Sony A1. This is an all-around powerhouse of a photography and filmmaking machine. If you want to spare no expense and pick up the best of what Sony has to offer, you can't go wrong with the Sony A1. Number 3. Sony A7 III. Best value full-frame Sony camera. Make no mistake, the Sony A7 III is the camera that started a revolution. If there was ever a camera that caused most photographers to switch to a mirrorless system, this is most certainly it. If you're thinking about switching to the best Sony camera or contemplating a move to mirrorless from DSLRs, don't waste your time anymore. The Sony A7 III is pretty much your perfect full-frame digital mirrorless camera. It's one of the best Sony cameras with its own set of quirks, but for the most part, it's ideal. Despite being the company's entry-level full-frame mirrorless digital camera, the Sony A7 III is still the model that's caused the most waves in the camera industry since its release in February 2018, sitting underneath the megapixel monster A7 III divided by IV and the Speed Demon A9, two expensive full-frame cameras that, although enticing, are rather specific in their usage. The A7 III offers class-leading technology at a surprisingly affordable price. Under the hood of one of the best Sony cameras, everything revolves around a glorious Sony 24.2 PBSI full-frame image sensor, which produces sharp, vivid, and contrasty JPEGs and RAW files, with tons of dynamic range. If you're used to incredible high ISO performance coming from a flagship DSLR, you won't be disappointed with the 50 all the way up to 204,800 ISO of the A7 III. I can shoot all day at ISO 64.0 if necessary, where images are impressively clean, with noise only creeping in slightly. Green LCD, dual memory card slots, 5-axis image stabilization, Wi-Fi, NFC and Bluetooth, and a weather-sealed body. All this adds up to a near-perfect mirrorless camera. So what about the downfalls of the Sony A7 III? Is it truly the best of the best Sony cameras available from the leading digital publisher? There are only a few small things with this highly capable camera, and mostly they're related to Sony in general. Ergonomics will take a little getting used to, especially if you come from a DSLR. While it's not a small camera, if you have large hands, you may need to invest in one of the many grips available so your bottom finger can rest on something. Then there's the menu, which is typical of Sony, deep and confusing. It'll take a while to get used to, but thank goodness for the My Menu option, which helps you organize your most used commands. That's pretty much it. I can't think of any photographers, professional or otherwise, who've switched to this impressive camera and regretted their decision. Most wish they'd done it sooner. The bottom line is that you're getting a massive amount of camera for a very competitive price. Yes, the Sony A7 IV is newer and better in several ways, but it's also a lot more expensive. Number 4. Sony A7 RV. Best Sony camera for landscape photography. Almost everything about the Sony A7 RV makes it an ideal camera for anyone interested in capturing stunning landscape shots. I want to kick things off by talking about the body of this camera. The magnesium alloy chassis is paired with comprehensive weather sealing that covers all of the ports and compartments as well as the joints in the chassis. I always get a little nervous when it starts to rain during the landscape shoot, but I'm confident that the Sony A7 RV is going to handle even the toughest weather I'd be shooting in. One of the most important things to look for in a landscape camera is resolution. The Sony A7 RV offers 61 megapixels backed by the new Exmor RBSI sensor and BIONZXR processor power. This camera also does something very unique that sent it to the top of this list for anyone interested in landscape shooting. It can do pixel shift multi-shooting. Pixel shift multi-shooting captures several separate images in quick succession by physically moving the sensor of the camera in 1 pixel or half pixel increment. The resulting images can then be stitched together to create a single photograph with an effective megapixel resolution of 240 point. That's an image size of 19,008 x 12,672 pixels. Your landscape prints are going to have a level of detail like you've never had before when you're shooting on the Sony A7 RV. This is also incredibly helpful if you plan on printing or displaying larger landscape photographs. This also means that you'll be able to stitch together some of the most impressive panoramas I've ever seen. There's also a lot of overlap between shooting landscape photography and cityscapes, vehicles, and even working with subjects like people and animals. The Sony A7 RV excels at capturing this wide variety of subject material for when you want to mix things up and not just shoot traditional landscapes. The autofocus can even automatically detect and track vehicles like planes, trains, and automobiles. This makes it easier than ever before to add a little extra something to your landscape photography. You can even dabble in wildlife photography since this camera is capable of automatically detecting and tracking animals and birds. With all of this said, the Sony A7 RV is far from being a unitasker. This camera might be best for landscapes, but it is going to do a great job handling a wide range of video styles. Capturing video has become more important for every photographer that I know. Even if video work isn't your mainstay, it's good to know that your camera can shoot a few frames in addition to capturing stunning photographs. The Sony A7 RV excels at video shooting 8 Kelvin at 24 frames per second and 4 Kelvin up to 60 FPS. This means that the Sony A7 RV is an excellent choice for anyone looking to capture landscape B-roll and establishing shots. You can even use this for serious documentary work and B-roll for movies. All of these features come together to make the Sony A7 RV my pick for the #1 landscape Sony camera. Number 5. Sony a6400, Best All-Round Compact. The Sony A6XXX range of APS-C sensor mirrorless cameras has been a favorite of a great many photographers the world over, ever since the release of the A6000 way back in 2014. Since then, every release of a new A6XX body has seen some relatively small set of feature updates, typical of a camera that's been updated so frequently. Despite the recent release of the Sony A6100 and the A6600 cameras, I still believe the A6400 offers the best bang for the buck. With the A6400, what has Sony brought to the table this time? Is it just a vlogging camera? Or is there something there for us still shooters too? I spent 2 months shooting with it to find out. First off, everything revolves around a glorious 24.2 megapixel Exmor CMOS sensor, which provides an impressive ISO sensitivity range and excellent low noise performance, especially for APS-C standards. I was able to shoot comfortably at ISO 800 all night long and still obtain clean files and accurate colors, thanks to a front-end LSI and the latest BIONZX image processor. Sony claims processing speeds that are 1.8x faster on the Sony A6400 when compared to its predecessors, a person holding a camera in their facing LCD screen. But the A6400 handles this relatively well, as long as you don't need to mount a hot shoe mic, since the screen prevents you from doing this without a cage of some sort. The 425 phase detects points combined with that real-time IAF and real-time tracking for moving subjects has been dribbled down from the A6400's full-frame big brothers, and works pretty damn well indeed. Sony really does make it much easier for photographers who shoot moving subjects, allowing the camera's settings to get out of the way of capturing the image you want. You just point and shoot. A big draw card of the Sony A6400 over the other full-frame mirrorless cameras in the range is its compact size. Choose your lens wisely, and you'll be able to slide the whole thing in your jacket pocket, with less than half the weight of some of the bulkier options. A6400 plus 28mm f2 sample images. Great image quality and bokeh from the Sony A6400 when coupled with the Sony f28mm f/2. As for lenses to use with the Sony A6400, I always tend to recommend small, lightweight primes over zooms, impressive as they are. Something like the f28mm f/2, despite it being meant for a full-frame sensor, performs admirably on the A6400, offering a versatile 35mm-ish field of view. If you want to stick to more affordable Sony E-mount lenses that have been made for the APS-C sensor, there's a whole host of great ones available, all of which pair nicely with the A6400. Just choose wisely to avoid unbalancing your camera body. Price-wise, the Sony A6400 is definitely a premium crop sensor camera, but in my opinion it could actually be priced more even higher on the impressive features included. As is typical with Sony cameras, there are tons of features somewhat hidden in the confusing menu. But when you have the A6400 set up as you want, you can use the camera buttons and dials most of the time. I also really enjoyed being able to focus and shoot just by touching the screen, perfect for remaining inconspicuous while shooting from the hip.